What if the greatest war movies of the 1960s weren't the ones you've actually seen? Beyond The Great Escape and Patton lies a buried generation of films that dared to show war without the hero-polish films too honest, too strange, or too ahead of their time. These aren't the movies your teacher screened in history class. These are the forgotten ones, raw, daring, and quietly unforgettable. Let's reopen the reel on 12 war films that still leave a mark. Hell is for Heroes, 1962. Steve McQueen trades swagger for desperation in Hell is for Heroes, a raw, low-budget World War II drama about a tiny squad pretending to be an entire division. With almost no reinforcements, they're ordered to hold off the German army, a hopeless bluff that turns into a psychological nightmare. Director Don Siegel keeps it tight, gritty, and unglamorous. The camera stays close to the mud and fear, turning the battlefield into a claustrophobic trap. McQueen's performance is stripped of charm. He's bitter, twitchy, and brilliant. Shot cheaply and trimmed down by the studio, the film still pulses with realism. There's no music to cheer you up, no clean victories, just smoke, silence, and exhaustion. Hell is for Heroes didn't win big in 1962, but time turned it into one of the decade's most honest war stories. A grim reminder that courage isn't about charging forward, it's about standing your ground when everything tells you to run. The Train, 1964. Burt Lancaster stars in The Train, a stunning mix of war and art heist. Set in occupied France, it follows railway workers trying to stop Nazis from stealing priceless paintings before the Allies arrive. Director John Frankenheimer shot everything with real trains, real explosions, and terrifying stunts. Lancaster even did many himself. It's not about flashy heroics, it's about obsession and sacrifice. The question burns through the film: is art worth dying for when lives are already being lost? Shot in stark black and white, it feels both epic and intimate. You hear every clank, every whistle, every heartbeat. The tension builds until you're practically holding your breath. The Train isn't just a war movie, it's a meditation on what's worth saving when civilization collapses. Technically brilliant, morally complex, and visually jaw-dropping, it's one of the rare action films that makes you think while it keeps your pulse racing. King Rat, 1965. In a Japanese prisoner camp, survival isn't about bravery, it's about brains. King Rat flips every war movie cliché. George Segal plays Corporal King, a hustler who thrives by trading, scheming, and manipulating guards while everyone else starves. Director Brian Forbes shoots it with documentary-like grit. No music, no glory, just the endless heat and moral decay of captivity. Segal's performance walks a razor's edge. You can't decide if he's clever or corrupt, but you can't look away. By the time freedom comes, the prisoners barely know what it means. The war's over, but they're too hollow to celebrate. Forgotten in its day, King Rat now feels like a quiet revolution. The anti-war film that dared to say decency doesn't always survive the longest. The Hill, 1965. Sean Connery shed his James Bond cool for pure torment in The Hill, Sidney Lumet's scorching story of soldiers punished in a British military prison during the North African campaign. The Hill is their punishment, a man-made mound of sand they must climb endlessly under the desert sun. Lumet's harsh black and white style traps you in the heat, showing obedience turning into cruelty. Connery's character, Sergeant Roberts, rebels against the sadistic system, proving courage isn't about combat but moral resistance. Critics didn't know what to make of it. Too raw, too angry, but today it stands as one of the boldest anti-war statements ever filmed. Every scream, every grain of sweat feels real. The Hill isn't entertainment, it's endurance. The Bedford Incident, 1965. Tension doesn't need explosions, just pride and paranoia. The Bedford Incident follows a U.S. destroyer captain, played by Richard Widmark, obsessed with chasing a Soviet submarine across icy waters. As hours turn to days, nerves fray and logic dissolves. Director James B. Harris builds unbearable suspense inside the ship's control room, blinking radar screens, whispered commands, and faces drenched in fear. Sidney Poitier's journalist character becomes the film's conscience, quietly warning of the madness brewing. When disaster finally strikes, it's chilling because you saw it coming all along. Overshadowed by Dr. Strangelove, this film is equally sharp, a Cold War nightmare that proves the most dangerous weapon isn't on deck. It's in the captain's mind. The Long and the Short and the Tall, 1961. War rarely gives you time to think, but this one forces you to. The Long and the Short and the Tall isn't your typical British war movie full of stiff upper lips and noble speeches. Instead, it's an intense, dialogue-heavy pressure cooker set in the steaming jungles of Burma, where a group of British soldiers slowly unravels during a doomed patrol. Based on Willis Hall's acclaimed stage play, the film stars Lawrence Harvey as Sergeant Mitchum, trying to hold his unit together as fear, boredom, and moral confusion tear them apart. There's barely any action, just the constant hum of insects, rain, and paranoia. The soldiers bicker, doubt their orders, and question the meaning of what they're doing there. It's a war film that's more about conversation than combat, but the tension cuts deeper than bullets ever could. The turning point comes when they capture a Japanese scout, a young, frightened man who doesn't speak English. The group debates what to do with him, and the decision divides them. Completely. That's when The Long and the Short and the Tall stops being about the enemy outside and becomes about the enemy within cowardice, guilt, and moral collapse. Shot with raw intimacy, the film feels almost documentary-like. The camera never blinks, never lets you look away from human frailty. When it premiered, some critics dismissed it as too talky. Today, that honesty feels refreshing, an early ancestor of modern anti-war films that dare to show soldiers as flawed and frightened rather than fearless. It's a film that doesn't glorify or condemn, only observes, and in doing so, it exposes how thin the line between courage and cruelty can be. Tobruk, 1967. Sometimes war isn't about survival, it's about audacity. Tobruk is one of those forgotten adventure war films that deserves a spot beside the guns of Navarone for pure tension and craft. Directed by Arthur Hiller, it stars Rock Hudson as a Canadian officer and George Peppard as a mysterious mercenary leading a commando raid across the North African desert to destroy a Nazi fuel depot. The mission sounds simple until everything that can go wrong does. Sandstorms, double crosses, and the haunting silence of endless dunes turn the film into a survival thriller wrapped inside an action movie. What makes Tobruk stand out isn't just the explosions or shootouts, it's the realism. Real tanks, real desert heat, and camera angles that make you feel the grit in your teeth. Hudson, often remembered for romantic comedies, proves he could carry a war epic with real gravitas. Peppard, meanwhile, plays his role with icy restraint, making you constantly question his motives. And while it delivers plenty of high-stakes moments, there's an undercurrent of fatalism, a sense that heroism might just be another form of self-destruction. The production itself was a logistical nightmare, filmed under punishing desert temperatures that left the cast sunburned and exhausted. But that hardship translates on screen. You can see it in their faces, in their eyes, in the way they move. It's authenticity through suffering. When Tobruk premiered, it didn't break box office records. Audiences were starting to turn toward more cynical war stories like The Dirty Dozen, but time has been kind to it. It's a beautifully photographed, tightly directed gem that proves bravery sometimes means walking into the sand knowing you might never walk out again. The Thin Red Line, 1964. Before Terrence Malick's poetic version decades later, there was this earlier adaptation of James Jones's The Thin Red Line, a film far rougher, leaner, and more grounded in sweat and fear than philosophy. Directed by Andrew Martin, the story follows a group of American soldiers fighting on Guadalcanal, one of the bloodiest Pacific campaigns of the Second World War. This version doesn't reach for poetry. It drags you into the mud. Keir Dullea and Jack Warden lead a cast of weary, disillusioned men who discover that the true enemy isn't just the opposing side, it's exhaustion, panic, and the slow erosion of their humanity. Martin, known for his work as a second-unit director on epics like Ben-Hur, brought that same energy here but stripped of glamour. He uses handheld cameras, jittery close-ups, and real explosions that feel chaotic rather than choreographed. You don't feel like a spectator, you feel trapped in the moment. The studio didn't promote it heavily, overshadowed by flashier war dramas of the time, but The Thin Red Line remains one of the most unsparing depictions of combat ever made. There's no heroism, no victory lap, only confusion, screams, and silence. One standout moment comes when the soldiers argue over retreating or pushing forward, and their commanding officer simply mutters, "Does it matter?" That line, more than any gunfire, defines the movie's tone war as endless repetition, where meaning itself breaks down. It's the forgotten thin red line, but maybe the truer one, less philosophy, more pain, and it deserves to be rediscovered for what it really was. The blueprint for the modern psychological war film. Play Dirty, 1969. Forget polished uniforms and patriotic speeches. Play Dirty is a war movie that rolls in the mud and never apologizes for it. Michael Caine stars as a British oil engineer reluctantly drafted into leading a sabotage mission through the North African desert. His team, a gang of criminals, mercenaries, and rejects who have as much loyalty to each other as a pack of scorpions. Directed by André de Toth, the film feels like the cynical cousin of The Dirty Dozen, only darker, smarter, and less forgiving. Every alliance is temporary, every victory hollow. Caine's character, Captain Douglas, is constantly torn between duty and survival. You can see the exhaustion on his face, the moral erosion that comes from too many compromises. The cinematography captures the desert as both beautiful and merciless. The horizon stretches endlessly, a reminder that there's nowhere to run. The action sequences are raw, with long silences between bursts of chaos amplifying the loneliness of each decision. What makes Play Dirty so fascinating is its lack of sentimentality. There are no heroes here, just people pretending to be until the situation demands otherwise. Caine reportedly loved the script because it felt real. "No one wins," he said. "They just get dirtier." The film wasn't a commercial hit when it came out. Audiences in 1969 were shifting toward more rebellious cinema, and this movie slipped between genres too bleak for action fans, too brutal for drama lovers. But with time, its brutal honesty has become its strength. Watch Play Dirty today and you'll realize how far ahead of its time it was. It predicted the gritty realism of later war films like A Bridge Too Far and Black Hawk Down, decades before they existed. The War Lover, 1962. Steve McQueen again, but this time, he's not the hero. In The War Lover, he plays Buzz Rickson, a bomber pilot during the Second World War who treats danger like a thrill ride. He's reckless, charming, and terrifyingly addicted to adrenaline. His co-pilot, played by Robert Wagner, watches in disbelief as Buzz risks their lives again and again, not for duty, but for the rush. Filmed in striking black and white, the movie captures the claustrophobia of bomber missions with incredible realism. The roar of engines, the vibration of metal, and the blank faces of young men waiting for orders all combine into something both mesmerizing and tragic. McQueen's performance is electric cool on the surface, but simmering with self-destructive obsession. There's a haunting irony here. His character is technically good at his job, but emotionally hollow. He needs war the way some people need air. When peace looms, you can see the dread in his eyes. Director Philip Leacock never romanticizes combat. The missions are nerve-wracking, the camaraderie brittle, and while there's a romantic subplot, it's really a mirror for Buzz's deeper problem. He can't connect to anything outside the chaos. The War Lover came and went quietly in 1962, overshadowed by bigger war epics. But it's one of the earliest films to portray combat addiction, a theme later explored in modern classics like The Hurt Locker. Watching it today feels eerie, like peering into the psychology of thrill-seeking destruction. McQueen doesn't play a hero or a villain, he plays a man so consumed by danger that peace itself becomes the enemy. The Secret Invasion, 1964. Before The Dirty Dozen, there was The Secret Invasion, a lean, fast-moving commando movie directed by Roger Corman, the king of creative efficiency. The setup: 5 convicts are offered a chance at freedom if they agree to undertake a suicidal mission behind enemy lines in Yugoslavia. It sounds familiar, but this film did it first and did it with style. Corman was known for working miracles on tiny budgets, and here he creates the illusion of a grand war epic with nothing more than clever editing, gritty landscapes, and pure storytelling drive. The cast, led by Stuart Granger, Vic Damone, and Mickey Rooney, brings surprising depth to what could have been pulp material. Each convict has a past, a flaw, and a sliver of redemption hiding underneath. What separates The Secret Invasion from other war flicks of the era is its tone: serious, suspenseful, and oddly human. The group isn't out for glory, they're just trying to make it through the mission alive. And yet, as the operation unfolds, small acts of courage begin to emerge, often at the worst possible moments. The film's climax, a desperate river crossing under fire, is one of Corman's most thrilling sequences, made all the more impressive because it was shot in just a few days. Critics often dismiss Corman as the B-movie guy, but The Secret Invasion proves how much artistry he could squeeze out of a limited canvas. If you love the rough-edged energy of The Dirty Dozen or Kelly's Heroes, this is the missing link. It's smart, fast, and far more emotionally grounded than anyone expects. Sometimes the smallest productions leave the biggest echoes. Castle Keep, 1969. If Salvador Dali had directed a war movie, it might have looked like Castle Keep. Starring Burt Lancaster and directed by Sidney Pollack, this surreal, dreamlike film follows a group of American soldiers defending a medieval castle filled with priceless art as the German army advances. But don't expect a straightforward battle film. This is more like a meditation on art, beauty, and destruction. The castle becomes a metaphor for civilization itself, fragile and crumbling under the weight of war. Lancaster's Major Falconer sees himself as the castle's protector, while his men are slowly losing their grip on reality. Some fall in love with paintings, others with the illusion of safety. The film shifts between humor, tragedy, and absurdity, often within a single scene. It feels like Catch-22 meeting an art museum. The lush visuals contrast sharply with the chaos outside, and Pollack uses color and composition like a painter. Every shot looks deliberate, almost hauntingly composed. When Castle Keep was released, audiences didn't know what to make of it. Critics called it too weird for a war film, but over time it's gained cult status as one of the most visually poetic anti-war statements of the 60s. What makes it unforgettable is that it doesn't tell you what to feel. It invites you to wander through its ruins, to question whether humanity can protect art or whether art is the only thing that can protect humanity. It's haunting, strange, and completely original. So there you have it, 12 forgotten war films from the 1960s that prove greatness doesn't always march in formation. Some were brutal, others poetic, but each dared to show the cost of conflict in a way that still hits hard today. Which of these have you seen, or better yet, which one will you hunt down first? Drop your pick in the comments, share this with a movie friend, and keep the reel of history turning.